This is Chapter 21, Section 8, page 394. In May 1864, General Sherman left Tennessee for Georgia with orders to inflict all the damage you can against the war resources. In September, Sherman reached Atlanta, the South's most important rail and manufacturing center. His army set the city ablaze. The re-election of Lincoln. Any hope of victory for the South lay in the defeat of President Lincoln in the election of 1864. Northern Democrats nominated George McClellan to run against Lincoln, his own general. Knowing that the North was weary of war, McClellan urged an immediate end to the conflict. He wanted to just stop fighting. Lincoln doubted he would win re-election. He thought he was going to lose. Grant seemed stuck in Northern Virginia, and there was no end in sight to the appalling bloodletting. Luckily for the president, Sheridan's destruction of the Shenandoah Valley and Sherman's capture of Atlanta came just in time to rescue his campaign. These victories changed Northern views of Lincoln and his prospects for ending the war. In November, Lincoln was re-elected. Sherman's march through Georgia. After burning Atlanta, Sherman marched his army across the state towards Savannah, promising to make Georgia howl. His purpose was to destroy the last untouched supply base for the Confederacy. As they marched through Georgia, Sherman's troops destroyed everything that they found of value. They trampled or burned fields and stripped houses of their valuables. They burned supplies of hay and food. Dead horses, hogs, and cattle that his troops could not eat or carry away lined the roads, just to make sure that the Southern troops couldn't have it. The Union troops destroyed everything useful in a 60-mile-wide path. In December 1864, Sherman captured Savannah, Georgia. From there, he turned north and destroyed all opposition in the Carolinas. Marching 425 miles in 50 days, he reached Raleigh, North Carolina, by March 1865. There, he waited for Grant's final attack on Richmond. The war ends. For 9 months, Grant's forces battered Lee's army at Petersburg, the gateway to Richmond. On April 1, 1865, the Union forces finally broke through Confederate lines to capture the city. 2 days later, Union troops marched into Richmond. Grant's soldiers moved quickly to surround Lee's army. Lee told his officers, "There is nothing left for me to do but go and see General Grant, and I would rather die 1,000 deaths." On April 9, 1865, General Lee, in his full dress uniform, arrived at Wilmer McLean's house in the village of Appomattox Courthouse. He was there to surrender his army to General Grant. The Union general met him in a mud-splattered and crumpled uniform. Grant's terms of surrender were generous. Confederate soldiers could go home if they promised to fight no longer. They could take with them their own horses and mules, which they would need for spring plowing. Officers could keep their swords and weapons. Grant also ordered that food be sent to Lee's army. Lee accepted the terms. As Lee returned to his headquarters, Union troops began to shoot their guns and to cheer wildly. "Woohoo, we won, we won!" Grant told them to stop celebrating. "The war is over," he said. "The rebels are our countrymen again." Touched by fire. No one who fought in the Civil War would ever forget the intensity of the experience. "In our youth," wrote Oliver Wendell Holmes, Jr., Our hearts were touched by fire. The nation, too, had been touched by fire. Many compared the Civil War to a great furnace that burned away one country and forged a new one in its place. In this new country, neither slavery nor the right to secession had any place. Just as Lincoln had said, the Union was a single whole, not a collection of sovereign states. Before the war, Americans tended to say the United States are. After the war, they said the United States is. These momentous changes came at a horrifying cost. Billions of dollars had been spent on the conflict. Almost every family had lost a member or a friend. More than 620,000 Union and Confederate soldiers were dead. Thousands more came home missing an arm or a leg. It would take generations for the South to recover from the environmental destruction wrought by the war. Croplands lay in ruins. 2/5 of the South's livestock had been destroyed. Many historians have called the Civil War the first truly modern war. It was the first war to reflect the technology of the Industrial Revolution: railroads, telegraphs, armored ships, more accurate and destructive weaponry. It also introduced total war, war between whole societies, not just uniformed armies. As devastating as it was, the Civil War left many issues unsettled. The old society of the South had been destroyed, but the memory of it lingered. Thousands of white Southerners clung to a romantic picture of the pre-war South. Decaying plantation houses became shrines. In the years to come, many in the South would try to recreate their vanished way of life. Secession and slavery were gone, but conflicts over states' rights and the status of African Americans would continue long into the future.